Everybody, video here for you today. I'm here with a friend, YouTube friend. I'm sure he's familiar to a lot of you folks out there, Anyextee, and I will leave a link for his channel below, but he's about to embark on a tour across ancient America. So you just want to talk about your trip coming up? Places you might want to go?
Really excited about that. Thanks for that introduction, Chuck. You know, and before I even talk about the trip, I just want people to know that, like, we're going to be working on a project coming together in the future. We're going to have another chat coming up post-trip about Sogmatar, and that's actually how I discovered Chuck. Was searching for that video after I found it in Turkey, and I was just blown away by the immense resource that is CFAP's YouTube channel. There's just so much content here for not only, you know, the most significant and prominent sites, but also a lot of the lesser known, more obscure sites. And, you know, I want to give a big shout out to you, Chuck, because you've done a phenomenal job.
I appreciate it, man.
In just expanding consciousness, and any effort in raising consciousness is a good one in my book.
I agree.
That said, oh, and I mean, the love that you've shown John Anthony West, much respect. You've been able to take Carlos's work, and, you know, a lot of people didn't get the opportunity to actually go on a Symbolist Egypt, Magical Egypt tour with John. There's many that did, but there's probably many more that never had that chance, and so they have to live through, you know, Carlos's video or my material. And in addition to that, what you've done in taking that and refacilitating it to so many more people is just amazing, man. Long live John Anthony West. Long live the Serpent in the Sky.
He's one of the reasons that I started talking about this. He makes something click in your mind about how you can't look at things through the modern eye, and it was just totally different back then.
Yeah, John's outlook on, you know, his worldview and his look toward authoritarianism and just academia has been a major influence in my work and helped to really influence, a lot of it. But this trip now, ancient America, obviously John's stuff is in Egypt. We've done stuff in Egypt. You know, one of my big passions is Mexico. Love the Sogmatar stuff in Turkey. You know, but I feel like America is something that's underrated when it comes to the ancient mysteries and ancient histories.
I'm going to turn this way and get a little bit out of the wind. All right.
And, you know, obviously Graham Hancock has done an amazing job in recent times, last few years, with his work, America Before, in really bringing attention to the deep mystery and antiquity here in America. We don't think of America. We think of Egypt. We think of Peru. We think of, you know, Baalbek and Mexico, but it's not often that many of us think of the mysteries that are right here in America. So that said, after inspired by Graham's work and just after being cooped up in the house in Northern California for a year and a half with, you know, the whole COVID situation, my family and I, my wife and my 9-year-old daughter, felt it was time to get back out on the road. And I am trying to grow my YouTube channel, so I'm trying to get some more content for that. So we wanted to get back out there to basically further investigate and further explore these sites. Many of them I have already been to. I've been to Cahokia. I lost a drone at Serpent Mound you know, years ago. It was when I first had a DJI Phantom drone, and this is right when the thing came out. Lost it too tall, a tree that was too tall to climb. Miscalibrated it, the wind took it. I was new to drones, I didn't really know what I was doing, and boom, I lost that. But I've been back a few times since, still haven't found the drone. Maybe this time it'll surface. But I have a new drone, so I'm excited about taking that with me on this trip and getting a lot of aerial footage of Cahokia, Serpent Mound, everywhere we go, Poverty Point.
What was some of your initial impressions at Cahokia with that huge, you know, Monk's Mound?
Yeah, that thing is just amazing. It's like, as soon as you get there, if you have the appropriate context, if you have traveled to Mesoamerica and been confronted with the pyramids that are venerated by the Mexica, which is, academia is known as the Aztecs. But when the Aztecs arrived, they had Teotihuacan. Obviously, they didn't build it, but that form, that structure, and the Maya pyramids and the many pyramids of Mesoamerica, for me, having a deep connection to those and having explored those, spent years going back and forth to Mexico with my wife, you know, investigating and researching there, and then seeing Cahokia, I was like, there's no doubt there's got to be, now this is before reading any of the academic literature. This is an unbiased approach, my first senses, right? It's eerily reminiscent to the pyramids that we see in the Americas. So then that's when you begin to look at everything else. Well, is there, you know, calendrics built in, and they have, you know, the wood henge there with the, you know, and you start looking, like Chuck and I we had a conversation earlier about, you know, astronomy and that, the way that it's embedded into the sites, archaeoastronomy, and even the acoustics, and trying to look at these sites from different perspectives. And that's what's interesting about this trip too, is because I get to go back now. You know, I've been several times. The first time you go, you have an intent, maybe you want to film it, or you're just exploring. Now I know the lay of the land. Now I have more knowledge. Now I've read more of the academic literature behind it. I can go with a whole new understanding and see the site in a different way. So I'm really excited about that. So it should be an incredible trip.
Is it the way that the mound, the big pyramid mound, and the other mounds are laid out? Is that similar to Mesoamerica, or is it just the setting that the whole complex takes place in, or what?
Yeah, I would say it's the setting too, but the form of the mound itself, to me, it's reminiscent of an early prototype pyramid. The first thing I thought of is, okay, well, if people came from the north, maybe they came here, maybe these even predate what we see in Mexico. Obviously, that's not the academic point of view, and that is up for a debate. But, you know, it was really the form that first struck me. But now that you mention it, the setting as well. I mean, the way it's all laid out in Mesoamerica, you have the giant ball courts, you have the ceremonial complexes, the way there's space. You know, there's a few different, you know, major differences. Here, we know in the Americas, people were actually buried, you know, in and under the mounds. You don't find that to be the case as much with Mesoamerica. There are burials at times found underneath, you know, certain structures. But yeah, it was just an energy. I know this is, for some people, it's a little woo-woo, but the intuitive, instinctual energy that's at the site, it's the same sort of energy that I'm getting with the sites in Mesoamerica. And I mean, really, when you look at it, the ancient ontology, for the ancient people, their ancient worldview, there was no America, Mexico, Canada. This was all Turtle Island. It was one landmass. All different names, all different tribes had different names, but, you know, it was one giant mound, if you will. Now we have these borders, so we think America, Mexico, and Chuck made a interesting point in our conversation off camera earlier about how we neglect some of these sites, right? People are like, oh, this can't be all that significant because there's grass over it. And we're really shortchanging ourselves from learning about the ancient past with that sort of view. So approaching it, trying to better understand the ontology of the ancients and trying to approach it in that way, it really opens up a whole new dimension of understanding.
Well, I think you're going to have a lot of fun and find a lot of interesting things. And the archaeoastronomy in those ancient America sites is just as prominent as in Egypt or any other place. And speaking of Egypt, you've been all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody will probably say the Sphinx or the Great Pyramid in Egypt. But do you have a special place that is not either the Sphinx or the Great Pyramid or Giza?
Actually, it's not Giza for me. I know a lot of people, it's either the Sphinx or the pyramids, and don't get me wrong, there's tombs have been written about both, and the connection, the feeling that people have, the affinity for those. For me, it's the Chapel of Sekhmet at Karnak in the Temple of Ptah. Those that have been inside that space will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a power place. It's, you know, if we look at the work of, say, the late John Burke, fascinating work. He went around ancient sites all over the world with magnetometers, he and his team, and tested the sites for the, you know, the subtle earth energies, of course you have the ley lines that connect these sites, but putting science to it by putting, you know, magnetometers and testing for the telluric currents and seeing the differences, the continuity, continuity, it's been a long day. I'm on such continuity, discontinuity. I'm on like 3 hours sleep now. I've been coming from Northern California. We got in at like 3 a.m. Anyway, yeah, just really putting science to it. And so a lot of these sites have been measured, and we know that there's different aspects to the site that bring about these different energies. And, you know, again, some people might be like, oh, he's talking energy, this is woo-woo. But I've watched grown men come out of the Chapel of Sekhmet in tears. I've watched non-believers walk into that shrine and walk out deeply moved. And I've had amazing experiences there. So for me, that's like the most potent place in all of Egypt.
Yeah, I did a video a long time ago on the magnetite in your brain and how certain stone chambers would affect that. And they say that the magnetite, you have billions of these little cells, crystal cells in your brain, and they say that affects your pineal gland.
Right.
So I wonder if there's a connection, and they knew something a long time ago that, like the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber isn't some sort of something that's supposed to reset your mind or something like that.
Right, and then I mean you have that effect with crystals and quartz and you know, a lot of the natural elements that we find around the sites. You know, there's a lot of different ideas about how these mysteries could be resolved. You know, you have ancient high technology. John Anthony West actually would explain this beautifully. There's 4 different ways to explain some of the anomalies at these ancient sites, and it could be a high technology like the work that Chris Dunn has really pioneered and brought to the forefront, and you know, others now. It's become a very popular subject on YouTube. Shout out to Bennett. UnchartedX has done a bunch of amazing videos on this. Then you have what could be a soft technology, which may be something that's right under our noses, something that's more natural and organic. Sound, acoustics, water. You know, there's a lot of theories out there. There's endless theories, but I don't think anyone has it quite right yet. It feels like we're still missing some pieces.
Yes.
Why? I can't say. Maybe it has to do with the astrological, you know, the celestial cycles and long period cycles and the way that affects humanity. If you think of it in the, you know, even the moon has an effect on water. We're mostly comprised of water. There's a lot more going on. You know, there's an influence from the celestial spheres. This is all well documented in Egypt, in the Dendera temple, by the Ptolemaic Egyptians who have it all on the ceiling. And it would just seem this, you know, these understandings, the ancient religions and ontology, it seemed to be a universal thing. So we find a lot of the same parallels and similarities in Egypt, in Mexico, even here in the States. And that's why I'm excited about, you know, this upcoming trip to ancient America. But also now that we're, you know, last year we postponed our COVID trip. Every year I do an annual tour with Adept Expeditions. Actually, sometimes we do several tours a year. We postponed it because of the pandemic, but this year I'm really excited about going back with Chris Dunn, by the way. How many more times are we going to see Chris Dunn in Egypt? I can't say with certainty, but it's an honor and a privilege to be traveling with Christopher Dunn, you know, co-leading that tour, where I typically do my esoteric Egypt tour. So we have the sacred science, we have the symbolism, we have Western esoteric concepts, and you know, and how that parallels Egypt and how it's derivative. It comes out of Egypt. The mystery schools have their roots in ancient Egypt. But then we also have Chris Dunn there in the field to explain, and not just explain like we see on YouTube, but explain from 50 years experience, you know, in his profession. There's not many people that can, you know, that were approaching Egypt in this way. And when an engineer like Chris Dunn comes to Egypt and sees these anomalies, we have to take that into consideration. Right. Egyptology is important. I don't want to just, you know, dismiss it all as quackademia. I find so much value in the academic texts. I find more value in a lot of the academic texts than I do in about 90% of the alternative space. But I think both sides are both very important and instrumental in really trying to understand the bigger picture. And
asking the right questions. It's not so much solving this, it's asking the proper questions.
And then when we get the answers, ask more questions and question everything. Question me. If you come to my channel and you look at my content, you know, sometimes I share my opinions and my own insights, but I don't like to, you know, see anything as final. You know, because anything can change, our perspectives can change. The way that we're viewing the world, we may be viewing the world through a limited perception. Maybe there's more that we need to understand and more context that we need to acquire, more exercises we need to do before we can get to the level of expanding our consciousness to a point where we can understand what happened back then. But we are making advances. We do see things in the science, like I mentioned with John Burke, like you mentioned, you know, with how these things are affecting the human body. even the sound, the resonance in a lot of the chambers. We're talking about Sogmatar.
They did resonance testing at Sogmatar that were very, very interesting on that strange hill there, and it's very fascinating. We're going to talk a lot more about that
I can't wait.
Video.
You're not going to want to miss this, everybody. If you're viewing this, you're going to want to watch it. I'm not in my best game right now. It's been a long ride, but Chuck and I are going to get together, and this is going to be an amazing talk. It's going to be an amazing Skype session. We're going to go deep on Sogmatar. We're probably going to talk about other stuff too. And yeah, you don't want to miss that.
Definitely. Well, before my arm starts cramping up a little more than it already is holding this phone, I think we'll just call this an interview and just say we'll have a lot more stuff coming up in the future. And I will be contacting you on your Ancient America trip. I've got a few things.
We'll stay in touch, and I'm sure there's a lot that you can help contribute, because there's, I mean, he has an Ancient America playlist. Here's the thing, you can't even do a YouTube video today that hasn't already been covered by Chuck. What hasn't Chuck covered? I mean, let's keep it 100%. We have to give props to this YouTube channel. It is a valuable resource. There's academics and travelers that may criticize Chuck because he hasn't actually been on site to a lot of the international destinations, but what he's done is so important for this space because he's done it from home. You're like the epitome of an armchair researcher, archaeologist who has not only done it for yourself, but provided a wealth of service because you brought it to so many of us. I've learned about things. Like I said, I've stumbled upon Sogmatar while I was there. I went to research it online right after that. The first thing I found, that's how I discovered your channel. And then I went through and I was like, this guy's covered so much content. So like,
and we should just say Sogmatar, or the another name for it, Sogmatar Harabese. That is about 8 or so miles south of Tepe, maybe 25 miles.
Very close. That's how I found it. We were
southeast of Göbekli Tepe.
We were originally trying to find. I was just finished exploring Göbekli Tepe for the first time, and had my taxi driver. We asked him to take us to Tepe. And we wanted to go check that out. And he ended up taking us somewhere else by accident. There was a miscommunication in the language that actually we had to use Google Translator, but it ended up being a massive benefit in the end. It was like, you know, we thought we were going off course. We didn't think we were going in, and then we find this amazing site. And
I was freaking out at the site when I found it on Google Earth. I cannot imagine wandering into that place, no idea what's going on. Because there is very ancient parts of that place, plus there is a period coming from about 2,000 years ago that I'm going to talk about too.
Yeah, there's, and I'm not entirely convinced on the dating yet. I think it could still have, you know, a much deeper antiquity than we're giving it credit for. And this is turning up in Turkey. There's a lot that hasn't been publicized yet, but my contacts on the ground in Turkey, they're finding a bunch of stuff right now, and the government does want to encourage tourism. So we're going to start hearing about a lot more discoveries coming out of Turkey. And I mean, just like, if you want to go to Göbekli Tepe in Sanlurfa, you have that whole, you know, the city is built upon all these ancient structures. There's just so much there, and it's being unearthed as we speak right now. So, and yeah, Chuck was literally one of the first researchers to document. I don't think there was anybody before. I mean, there was the acoustic.
There was one like 2-minute video on Sogmatar that had like 120 views.
In another language too, I think, right? It wasn't.
Yeah. I had to translate and figure stuff out, and then when I discovered that this king, the Abgar dynasty, was there,
that's right.
Then red flags went off, and the hair on the neck stood up. And
yeah, for me, that whole, you know, I'm very much into the Western esoteric mystery tradition. So, and studying the flow of the mystery schools out of these ancient civilizations into Western esotericism and to modern day Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, you know, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and so forth, and looking at those roots. And you know, the Hermetic tradition was carried, you know, was taken out of Egypt, you know, after the Arabic invasion, and made its way, filtered to Haran with the Sabians. I know you've talked about this in your videos before, but for me, that's what's fascinating, because you have this mystery tradition that was preserving the Hermetic tradition, the Hermetic mystery tradition, which gives way to the alchemical tradition, alchemy, and many of the mystery schools that, you know, to modern Western esoteric organizations today. Many of them owe their roots to the Hermetic tradition, and like, you know, the Sabians were preserving that tradition at Haran. It was one of the earliest mystery schools. It was an ancient
and their main god
university.
Was Sin, the moon god, and it seems to be a lot like Thoth in Egypt.
Venerated.
I think there's a deep connection between the Sabians and ancient Egypt. I think Graham writes about that in
I think he writes about, you know, there was a tradition of the Sabians to go to Egypt. They would go to Egypt to the Giza on a pilgrimage. I'm looking very much forward to our Sogmatar shot, and I'm going to bring in some of my footage, including the unreleased footage. If you go to my YouTube channel, if you're watching this, please do, because I don't have that many subscribers and I could use a few more. If you go there and you watch my Sogmatar video, I'm gonna, this interview or a talk, informal talk, whatever it's gonna be, this project that Chuck and I are collaborating on, I'm gonna share my unreleased footage on that. And maybe we'll get into some of the other stuff, because I visited like 8 sites in one day.
There's a lot to talk about right in that area. But hey, buddy, I think we'll just call it an interview there. But it's a beautiful night out here on the Vegas Strip. This is where we're hanging out. This is where Evel Knievel jumped about 50 years ago, right here. But I will leave a link to your Sogmatar video and your channel in the description.
Thank you.
All right. That. And maybe you'll even see this on your channel.
Sounds good to me.
All right, man. Cool. Thanks.